However, if the point is not very clear, what you do is to what? Is to mm, um, solve the equation simultaneously, either by substitution or by elimination, no? Subtraction and then elimination. Subtraction or addition and then elimination of some variables in order for you to solve for the other variables. Now, in that aspect, it might not be also, or that would be the concept that is going to be used when you are going to solve a system of equations when you have three unknowns. You remember last time you had your algebra. So you solve for the equations in three unknowns. And then what you do there is mostly by elimination, substitution, no? I mean, elimination by addition or subtraction. And then eliminate, if you have three variables, then you have to eliminate one first, reduce it to two, and then after that, you generate two equations, solve the two equations simultaneously to be able to know the first two, the values of the first two variables, and then by substitution, you can eventually get the third. And so what happens there, let's say if you have something like x, y, z, and then you eliminate z, you must have two equations containing only x and y. Then after that, with these two equations, you can solve for x and you can solve for y, substitute it in another equation that contains x, y, z, then you're able to solve for z. And therefore, when you say x equals 1, y equals 2, and z equals 3 as the solution, these are also equations. Because when you are going to have x, y, z, x plus y plus z is equal to a constant, then when you say x equals 1 means that x is equal to 1, y has a coefficient of 0, and z, I mean, has a coefficient of 0. That is why when you are going to construct the matrix representing one column for x, one for y, I mean, and one for z, then it will come out to be 1, 0, 0. You understand? So when you say x equals 1, then you will have the matrix of coefficients representing that will be 1, 0, 0. Because you have 1 times x plus 0 times y plus 0 times z is equal to 1. And when you have y equal to 2, then the complete equation there that also includes the x and the z would be 0 times x plus 1 times y plus 0 times z is equal to 2. Do you have a piece of paper and pen at your side or your notebook? So if you write x equal to 1, then transforming it to an equation containing x, y, z would be 1 times x plus 0 times y plus 0 times z is equal to 1. Let's go to the next one. We have y equal to 2. Transform it into 0 times x plus 1 times y plus 0 times z is equal to 2. And for the third one, when z is equal to 3, that can be transformed into 0 times x plus 0 times y plus 1 times z is equal to 3. Thus, you are going to have your matrix of coefficients, first column. Okay, do you have your pen and paper or your notebook and paper with you? Notebook
Yes,
and
miss.
pen
Yes,
with
ma'am.
you? Hello? You have notebook and pen with you?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
Yes,
so
ma'am.
you
Yes.
will have first column representing the coefficients of x will be 1, 0, 0. You understand? First column, 1, ay, excuse, excuse me, 1, 0, 0 for the first column, representing the coefficients of x in those three equations. Let's go to the second column. Katia, what would be the second column representing y? Kathia, what would be the second column representing y in the matrix of coefficients? Hello? Can you hear me? Class, can you hear me?
Yes, miss.
Yes, miss.
Hello? Wait ha, kay di kay nako maklaro. The second column will be
010, miss.
France, what's the second column? What will be the coefficients for y?
The coefficients of y, miss, is 010.
0, 1, 0. Okay, what about the third column? Sophia, the third column representing z. What will be the coefficients of the third column? Sophia?
001, miss?
Yes, 0, 0, 1. That's it. And then you can come up with another column for the constants. And the other column would be of the constants will be 1, 2, 3. Did you get it? And then the first column will have a heading of X, and the second column will have the heading of Y, and the third column is going to have a heading of Z. That's why you can read it back into an equation which will be 1 times X, or X is equal to 1, Y is equal to 2, and Z is equal to 3. Is that clear?
Yes,
Hello,
miss.
class. Is that clear?
Clear, miss.
Yes, miss.
Anong hinay man ni akong panoy audio? Di kay ko makadungog. Can you hear me? Is the is my voice okay?
Yes, miss.
Volume.
Okay, na, miss.
Yes,
Okay,
miss.
miss.
Okay. So, that is also our aim when we are going to come up with the simplex form from the original matrix of coefficients of our constraints together with the objective function, we are going to reduce it into the matrix containing the following major uh, components, which is 1, 0, 0. I'm now reading according to the row, no? 1, 0, 0, 0, 1, 0, and 0, 0, 1. First column is 1, 0, 0. Second column 0, 1, 0, and the third column will be 0, 0, 1. If you read horizontally, it will be 1, 0, 0, it will be 0, 1, 0, and 0, 0, 1. In other words, you will be able to see rows and columns wherein one appears not on the same row and column for every other set of equations. Do you understand?
Yeah.
Anyway, whatever presentation I have now, I'm going to send this to you by mail. So the 3-point persons, there are 3 or 5-point persons. I will send this and then share it with the other students. Yes, Angelo? Hello? Di ka na karon na ha kay ang akong kanang headset ako ni ipa-adjust kadiyot ha. Kay di kay ko makadungog.
Because you probably. Hmm?
Kasi ha? Ikaw lang sa nesikat.
Wait, wait. Okay, na-mute mo nimo.
Na-mute ako.
Oh, you kept on playing with this one.
Wala ko eh.
Na-mute siya. Oh.
Okay na nabi. Check. Katia, can you... Franz, can you please
Yes,
talk?
miss.
Yes, miss. Hello.
Yeah.
Hello,
Ah,
miss.
okay, okay na. Sorry, class. Di man ko ni akong unit good. Borrowed, borrowed. Okay. So, pero kadungog mo nako.
Yes, miss.
Karon miss, yes, miss.
Okay naman.
Miss na may question, miss.
Na ako'y, di sa kay ko makadungog pod.
Naaba daw kay gi-share, miss, like PowerPoint.
Ah, PowerPoint, kagi-share? Wala pa.
Like karon daw, miss. Okay, miss. Okay, miss.
Wala pa.
Mura to yung question,
Kaya
miss.
nag-intro pa ko.
Okay, miss. Sige, miss.
Sige. So, let us, let me check, ha? Okay, can you see it? Can you see the
Yes,
slide?
miss. Yes,
Yes,
miss.
miss.
Okay.
Yes, miss.
So I will send this after, no? Mahumantag sa dili. Pero I just have to be, how do you call that? Kanang be patient, because if you will not be able to follow through, you can read this. The instructions in how to do it is very, very clear. And if not, during when I will be back for actual face-to-face classroom meeting, I will clarify, no, some issues regarding this, because the method here, especially if you were not able to remember, if you're not able to remember your algebra and use the how do you call that, the Gauss-Jordan way of solving um, systems of equations, it might just be quite difficult for you to do it. Anyway, all the instructions are here, and so what you will do is practice. So first, you will have an overview of what simplex method is, wherein I gave already an introduction. No, that is the first is the conversion of your systems of inequalities into matrix format. Now, once you have the matrix format, the next thing that you will do will be to look into standardization of the equations and the inequalities to be converted into equations. The rules will also be presented here. So from the original, how do you call that, matrix of coefficients, we will then look into transforming it into standard form. Then we will have the first, the tables, no, the tables of transition from the original until the final solution. So first, you will have to start, of course, with your initial simplex table, and then how you can improve, or signals, or what are the signals for impossible improvement, and then what will be your final, no, final solution to the problem. Okay, so that's actually the format. So let's have first, you formulate the problem as a linear programming problem. And if you can remember last time, I told you that when you are given You are given a linear programming problem. There are what you call as characteristics. And there are characteristics were as follows. You should have an objective function. There should be limitations. What else? Anybody? There were four. You have objective function, you have limit constraints or limitations, the issue on alternative courses of action, and for your objective function and your constraints, you can transform them into or you make them into equations or in mathematical equations and inequalities. So those are the characteristics of a linear programming problem. And take note, you have to remember this because this will be part of your final examination also for the objective type. No, so you formulate your linear programming problem. What you will do would be to put in a table. No, you are going to construct a table wherein you will put all the given data on the table. And but first of all, you have to determine what your variable stands for so that you will know how to formulate your objective function and your constraints. Then you will have to transform it into standard form. Then you will have to put in your tabular form, no, of the matrix, and then you execute using the simplex method. Okay, so this one is an example. You have a minimization problem. You minimize 2x sub 1 minus 3x sub 2 minus 4x sub 3. Notice that there are three variables, x sub 1, x sub 2, and x sub 3. And there are your objective function is minimization. And your constraints, there are three plus the non-negativity constraint. Take note, ha, the non-negativity constraint will always be part of your linear programming problem. So the first one is x sub 1 plus x sub 2 plus x sub 3 is less than or equal to 30. This is a less than inequality. The second one is 2x sub 1 plus x sub 2 plus 3x sub 3 is greater than or equal to 60. This is the greater than inequality. And the third one is an equation. So you have x sub 1 plus x sub 2 plus 2 minus x sub 2 plus 2x sub 3 is equal to 20, and all your variables must be non-negative. So in this case here, you are given a particular you're given a particular example wherein no example wherein there are three possible types of inequalities: the less than, the greater than, and the equation. And this will give us a chance to be able to transform it into standard form. This is still the original, no, the original linear programming problems. Okay, so we have an LP is in standard form when all variables are non-negative and all constraints are equalities. In this case, this is not in standard form because this is an inequality, this is an inequality, and this one only is the one that satisfies it. Then let's look into it. So putting an LP or linear programming formulation into standard form involves adding a slack variable for those less than constraint and subtracting a surplus variable for the greater than constraint. Now take note, let's go back. If we look into this, the left is smaller than the right. Can you follow? To make this equal, we always manipulate the left side of the equation or inequality. So therefore, if the left side is less than the right side, how do you make them equal? You make them equal by adding something on the left side. Okay? Is this clear? So
Yes,
Yes,
we
miss.
Miss.
add something. So it will be x sub 1 plus x sub 2 plus x sub 3 plus s sub 1. S sub 1, the letter S I'm using because I'm talking about a slack variable. Now, how does a slack variable behave? a slack variable behaves as, for example, this is less than 30. So let's say, for example, that this one is if you add the first plus the second plus the third is 28. 28, right? 28 is less than 30. How do you make it equal? By adding a slack variable. And the slack variable there would have to have a value of 2. So that 28 plus 2 is equal to 30. Do you understand?
Yes, miss.
Yes,
Hello?
miss.
Understand? Okay. So to make it equal by manipulating only the left side. So we add an S sub 1 representing a slack variable. For application purposes, what is the role of S sub 1? Remember when we had our first example of tables and chairs? Can you still remember that, Allen? Tables and chairs example? We have graphical method. Can you remember?
Murag absent ko na, miss.
Hmm. Okay. I had a question there on utilization. Can you follow? And the right side represents capacity. Capacity for what? It was carpentry,
Idol, miss.
something, painting and finishing, no? So that means if the capacity is 30 and the left side only allowed you to use 28 hours. So the S sub 1, which is slack, equivalent to 2 hours, represents a variable that will absorb whatever is idle capacity. Okay, what is the idle capacity or in excess of the what? The used up. You used up only 28. So you need still 2 to make it into full utilization of 30. So the S sub 1 represents, it absorbs, or the slack variable absorbs the idle capacity. What do you mean by idle capacity? It is the capacity which is not put to use. Did you get it? Christian? Christian Crabornay. Christian. Christian, can you hear me? Wala si Christian. Shannon, can you hear me? Shannon. So many upan. Uy. Vaughn, can you hear me?
Yes, miss.
Mm. So did you understand what I was talking? Unsa man uban wala mo'y audio?
Naa, miss.
Or wala mo diha? Oh, bahala mo ha.
Naa, miss. Uy.
Okay, let's go now to the second one. So, the first rule is what? Always manipulate the left side of the inequality. So, since it is less than, what do you do with a less than inequality? You add a slack variable, S sub 1. What is the role of the slack variable? If it is capacity, it absorbs the idle capacity. Okay. Did you get it? That is the, how do you call that? The summary, no? Of the less than inequality. Let's go to the greater than inequality. The greater than inequality, since the left is larger than the right, how are you going to make it into an equation, Julie? Julie Christie, how are you going to make it into an equation? Ang left side. Ngita na lang kog kuan oy, kinsay mo raise hand B? Okay, Tyron. How do you make the left side equal to 60?
Subtract slack value, miss.
You are going to,
Subtract, miss. Slack
okay,
value.
subtract. Subtract, no? So that will be 2x sub 1 plus x sub 2 plus 3x sub 3. We will now use another slack, which will but minus. So minus s sub 2 is equal to 60. Do you understand?
Yes, miss.
Yes, miss.
Okay. Now, there is also a rule in simplex method that at the initial, no, at the initial assignment, you can take only, now you can take only the assumption that all those added or subtracted variables are positive, or the positive valued, no, variables will only be the first entering variable. Okay. Now, since in the first, no, we have plus S sub 1. So S sub 1 will be positive. So no problem for the less than. But for the greater than, it's minus S sub 2. So minus S sub 2 cannot be an initial entering variable. So what you are going to do is to add an artificial variable. What is the role of an artificial variable? You are making that artificial variable absorb everything. So for example, you have 2x sub 1 plus x sub 2 plus 3x sub 3. Then we have a minus s sub 2. Then we will put in an artificial variable plus a sub 1 greater than or equal to 60. If this were a mixture problem, you remember in the test na ato'y mixture problem? Hello, sa test na ay mixture problem, no? Katong vitamins
Yes,
ba?
miss.
Oh, so if it is a mixture problem, then it means that you are making your artificial variable be an expensive substitute, which contradicts, no? It's contradicting your objective of minimizing. Kay expensive man siya nga substitute, that means you start from the largest possible value and your objective would be, mugamay pa ka ni siya because our objective is minimizing it. All right. So, on the third, okay ha, sa less than, you add a slack variable. For a greater than, you subtract a slack variable but add an expensive or a large valued artificial variable. For the equation, na may equation ang third constraint. X sub 1 minus x sub 2 plus 2x sub 3 is equal to 20. None of them can go as an initial entering variable. So in order for you to be able to fulfill that, we will also put in an artificial variable. So you will have x sub 1 minus x sub 2 plus 2x sub 3 plus a sub 2 is equal to 20. And now, on the last non-negative constraint here, we will have more variables. We will add here S sub 1, S sub 2, S sub 1, S sub 2, and A sub 1, and A sub 2. Did you get it? Mapunaan naman ni nimong imong last, no? Nga inequality. Okay, so any question at this point? Those are the rules. First one, for a less than, add a slack variable. Role of the slack variable, absorb idle capacity. Number two, if it is greater than, subtract the excess. So subtract using a slack variable. But since that is negative, I cannot use it as an entering variable. So add an artificial variable. And an artificial variable is going to have assumed to be a big value. And then for an equation, you are going to add an artificial variable, also a big value. Okay, that will be summarized here. In an LP, no, an LP is in standard form when all variables are non-negative and all constraints are equalities. We have already transformed all the inequalities into equations. Putting an LP formulation into standard form involves adding a slack variable to a less than constraint and subtracting what you call a surplus variable, muni ang extra, no, extra from your greater than constraint. Okay. So this is now your standard form. However, you cannot put this in the initial table because this one is minus, this one has nothing as initial, no? Absorption. So what is being done here? A set of equations is in table form if for each equation its right hand side is non-negative and there is a basic variable for an equation is a variable whose coefficient in the equation will always be positive and whose coefficient in all other equations of the problem is 0. It is plus 1 if it is present. If it is absent, the coefficient is 0. In other words, balik ta ha, kani siya, pila to ka variables ato na kay S sub 1, S sub 2. Remove usa nato ang artificial ha. So if I will put in the table, kinahanglan this one will have an x sub 1, x sub 2, x sub 3, s sub 1, and an s sub 2. Pero the s sub 2 appears here only. Wala may s sub 2 diri. So if you are going to look into the coefficients, it will be 1, 1, 1, 1, 0 for s sub 2. Did you get it? And then for the second one, it's going to be 2, 1, 3, 0 for S sub 1, negative 1 for S sub 2. And for the third one, it will be 1 minus 1, 2, and then 0 for S sub 1 and 0 for S sub 2. Did you get it? When it is present for your S sub 1, coefficient is 1. When it is absent, the coefficient is 0. That was what I explained earlier, no? When we had x equals 1, y equals 2, and then z is equal to 3. If it is missing, coefficient is 0. Did you get it? Basin kanang vacation mode pa mo diha, ha? Okay? Hello? Eh, wait sa. All right. So to generate an initial table form, that's actually it's tableau form, an artificial variable must be added to each constraint that does not have a basic variable. So ang imong basic variable mo tong S sub 1, S sub 2, and S sub 3, whatever that is. Pero ang imong if it does not have a basic variable, example katong third equation, equal man siya, wala siya S sub 1 or S sub 2, you will have to put in an artificial variable. And of course, when the basic variable has a coefficient of negative 1 because it has to be positive. Okay, now you see this. Can you follow? Be, nakasabot mo sa akong explanation why we have this table now? This is now converting, ha? So, ang inyong role, no? If you are given a word problem, unsa to'y buhaton primero? You will make a table of given data. Once you have made a table of given data, first, identify what your variables stand for. In other words, what does x sub 1 stand for? What does x sub 2 stand for? What does x sub 3 stand for? Then you make your table of data coming from the problem. Once you have your table of data given in the problem, you're going to formulate your objective function and your constraints. Mind you, when you are given a word problem, naaragyud sa problem ang unsa ang imong objective function. Like for example, find the best solution that will maximize profit. Di syempre, your objective function is profit maximization. And then your next question, asa man ko mangita ang profit? Oh, so that means you are going to see what are the components of the profit equation. No? In our sample problem, profit from the production of tables and profit from the chairs. Okay, so ang atong unknown will be tables and chairs. So that will give you an idea of what variables should be you're considered as your unknown. Okay. So mo na akong gistorya last time, di ba? Julie? Julie? Julie, are you around? Okay. So this was what I have mentioned earlier. So this one plus S1. Now you might then, anong naman daghang space din ha? This is telling you that you have no S1, so 0 ang coefficient, no A sub 2, so also 0 ang coefficient, and no S sub 3, 0 sad ang coefficient. In other words, you are now putting this into a form wherein all the variables must be present. The problem is you cannot put in A sub 2 here. That's why when you are going to write your table of coefficients or the matrix of coefficients, then the column representing A sub 2 will be 0. The column representing A sub 3 for this will be 0. Can you follow? And then all the rest here. Now, how many variables do you have? X sub 1, X sub 2, X sub 3, S sub 1, S sub 2, A sub 2, and A sub 3. Ganina, I mentioned A sub 1 and A sub 2. So, gilisan og A sub 2 and A sub 3 para dool ra second and this one is the third. Okay, it's actually immaterial. So, any questions at this point? Wala pa tayo nag-solve. What are we doing, Sophia? What are we,
Kanang pa-equal, Miss, to add the
what are
slack.
we doing at this point? We are still in the process of,
Identifying the coefficient.
okay, and then transforming it into standard form. No, nag-transform pa ta. Okay. Okay. So the simplex tableau is a convenient means for performing the calculations required by the simplex method. All right. So step 1. If the problem is a minimization problem, multiply the objective function by -1. If the problem formulation contains any constraints with negative right-hand sides, multiply each constraint by -1. Add a slack variable to each of the less than constraint, and then subtract a surplus variable and add an artificial variable to each of the greater than constraint. Now, this is not the summary no, of what we have done. Okay. I will mention this one later no, when we go into the process. Now, number 5, add an artificial variable to each equality no, constraint. This one is represented by the third constraint. Now, set each slack and surplus variables coefficient in the objective function equal to 0 in the condition wherein it is absent. So, ang iyang coefficient is 0. Set each artificial variable coefficient in the objective function to be equal to -m, where m is a very large number. I think I have mentioned it to you, no? For example, when you are going to have minimized cost in a mixture. So what does the artificial variable? What's the role of the artificial variable? The artificial variable is presumed or assumed to be a very expensive substitute. So if it is a very expensive substitute, the m value is a very large number. Okay, no? Now, each slack, an artificial variable, becomes one of the basic variables in the initial basic feasible solution. All right. Then, in the simplex method, determine the entering variable. What is the condition of that entering variable? Identify the variable with the most positive value in a C sub j, Z sub jth row. Anyway, we will illustrate that later. Where is that row? And then the entering column will be called the pivot column. Or this is called what you call as the optimum column. No? Now, considering that it to be a pivot column, it's because it manipulates all the other values no in that column. Determine the living left no katong mawala no variable. For each positive number in the entering column, compute the ratio of the right-hand side values divided by these entering column values. If there are no positive values in the entering column, you are going to stop, meaning that the problem is unbounded. And because it is unbounded, it means that the problem has not been correctly formulated. Otherwise, select the variable with the minimal ratio. In other words, the right-hand side divided by the corresponding number in the pivot column or in the optimum column, you are going to choose the smallest non-negative quotient. Naraha? Minimal ratio. Ratio means quotient, isn't it? Linel? Linel John. Linel John, are you around? Ayaw ba ninyo walay mga kung ano? Uy, Linel! Matthew, are you around?
Ni-chat
Wala
to si
sad.
Lenal, miss.
Hmm?
Ni-reply ra siya through chat.
Hmm. Okay. Step 3, generate the next table or tableau. Divide the pivot row by the pivot element and the entry at the intersection of the pivot row and pivot column to get the new row. Then we denote this new row as row asterisk or what we call as the generating row or the row that generates all the other rows in the new table. No? Or what we call replacing row. It is a row that will generate all the other rows in the same table to come up with a new one. Replace its non-pivot row I with the new row, which is the current row minus the A sub j times row, and so on. I will illustrate that one so that it will be easier for you to understand. Where A sub ij is the value in the entering column j of row I. So, ang atong mga row is labeled as I and the columns as j. So, the number will be ij. So, representing row and column. In other words, if you have A sub 2, 3, it means A sub 2, 3, Christian. Unsay meaning ana? What does 2 stand for? Christian. What does 2 stand for? 2 stands for the row number, row 2, and 3 stands for column 3. O, mo na iyang location. No? Okay. Next. For each column J, multiply the objective function coefficients of the basic variables by the corresponding numbers in column J and sum them up. Okay. Mag-illustrate na ta ha. Then, you calculate all the rest. Then, after that, for each column J, subtract the Z sub jth row from this one is these are the ones no that you will have to read through and find out because it will be easier for you to to understand these steps if we go actually into a sample, no? Okay. So naa din ha ang mga steps but we will illustrate it in a specific sample. All right. Ang katong first example, take note ha. Ang first example was only for purposes of illustrating the less than, the greater than, and the equation in terms of transforming it into its standard form. 3 o'clock takutob, no?
Yes,
Yes,
miss.
Would it
miss.
be?
Yes, miss.
Okay. Sige. Kung di ta mahuman, basta ihatag ko man ninyo. So, kani siya, ato ni solve. So, this will be something new. So, 12 maximize, let's say A, and that's equal to 12x sub 1 plus 18x sub 2 plus 10x sub 3. We have the basic variables are x sub 1, x sub 2, and x sub 3. So, ang first constraint is 2x sub 1 plus 3x sub 2 plus 4x sub 3 less than or equal to 50. This is a less than, no? Less than inequality. Therefore, asa man, how do we transform this into its standard form? Okay, how do we transform? Gem C, how did we transform this into standard form? Kaning first. Gemsi. Muta na lang ko ha. Asa man mo karon sa school or at home?
At
At
home
home,
ra,
miss.
miss.
Oh, at home, at home. Okay, sa may naa sa school, ni nagamit og cellphone. Oh, sige, pulos at home ni ha. Okay. So how do we transform ang first? Less than man ni siya. So it's going to be a plus or a minus? Yev,
Plus,
plus. Unsa may atong i-plus?
Slack variable, miss.
Plus
slack.
slack. No, plus S sub 1. Did you get it? Okay,
Yes, miss.
number 2 is greater than 0. Is this a plus or a minus?
Minus, miss.
Minus, miss.
Minus.
Minus, miss.
Minus man siya, mag-add pa tag artificial variable, isn't it?
Yes, miss.
Okay. So it will be x sub 1 minus x sub 2 minus x sub 3 minus s sub 1 and then plus artificial variable. What about the third one? Greater than. What do you do with the left side? It will be
Subtract yapon, miss.
minus, minus, and then plus, isn't it?
Yes,
Minus
miss.
plus artificial. Did you get it?
Yes, miss.
So
Yes,
how
miss.
many variables do we have now? Aside from x sub 1, x sub 2, x sub 3, we will have s sub 1, we'll have s sub 2, we'll have s sub 3, and then plus 2 artificial variables representing kaning duha, di ba? Okay? So, maana ni ang result. Only with the basic variables. Wala pa natong artificial. Can you follow?
Yes, miss.
Oh, can you follow? Munang gipang blanco-blanco pa na diha. Pero supposed to be dapat na fill up na siya because the coefficients are 0. Okay. Mao na siya ang imong table. Ay, wait. Mm. Do you understand where we got this? Balik. Oh. So you will have what? 2, 3, 4, 1, 0, 0, then 50. 2, 3, 4, 1, 0, 0, 50. Did you get it?
Yes, miss.
Let's go to the next one. It will be negative 1, 1, 1, 0, 1, 0, 0. Okay? Negative 1, 1, 1, 0, 1, 0, and then equal 0. Let's go to the third one. Ay, wait. Sama ni? Minus, no? So, negative 1, 1.5, 0 sa ni dire, di ba? 0, negative 1, 1.5, 0, 0, 1 equals 0. Mao na siya result. Did you get it?
Yes, miss.
Did you get the table? Wala na to gisulod ang artificial in this case here. Only the basic. Can you follow?
Follow, miss.
Okay.
Miss, I have a question, miss.
So we have, this is the column for x sub 1. Column for x sub 2. Coefficients ni ha? Column for x sub 3. Coefficients s sub 1. Coefficient x sub 2. Coefficient s sub 3. Okay. Unsa may atong basic
Miss.
variables Ang basic variables nato kay ang first kani manggod kun basahon ni nimo moingon ni siya nga 2x sub 1 plus 3x sub 2 plus 4x sub 3 plus s sub 1 equals 50. Can you follow? Basahon ta ni negative x sub 1 plus x sub 2 plus x sub 3 plus s sub 2 is equal to 0. Nya kaning usa, this will now be x sub 1 minus x sub 2 plus 1.5 x sub 3 plus s sub 3. Pero minus ba yan ning duha unta? Isn't it? Hello?
Yes, miss.
Anong
Yes,
minus
miss.
man ni? Ha? Minus na sila. Tapat, di ba? Because this was coming from what? The greater than. Di ba? The greater than.
Yes, miss.
Yes, miss.
Oh. Pero, we make an assumption usa. Wait ha. Okay. Unsa may nahitabo? Unsay nahitabo? Ang imong x sub 1 kani gimultiply nimo by negative 1. Negative 1 plus plus. Mao na negative 1 plus plus. So nahimo siya nga plus ang s sub 2 imbis minus s sub 2. Did you get it?
Yes, miss.
Na dito sa usa ka step, now before the step, by multiplying each by negative 1, making them less than constraint. Did you get it?
Yes, miss.
Hello.
Yes,
Di ba kung
miss.
mag-multiply ka, for example ha, nganong mahimo, ang imong less than, ang imong greater than, nahimong less than. By example, 5 is greater than 1. Correct? Alin?
Yes, miss.
Correct, miss.
Okay. Multiply both sides by negative 1. Negative 5, unsa man na, in relation to negative 1.
Less than, miss.
Less
Less
than,
than
miss.
Less
negative 1.
than. Di ba? Naani sa kanang rule sa algebra before that when you multiply it by negative, then the order is going to be reversed because your negative 5 is now less than negative 1. Mo nang nahitabo ngang imong greater than, wait ha, ang imong greater than, when you multiply this by negative and negative, the greater than becomes less than. And this one will also be negative, positive. This will now be less than 0. Can you follow?
Yes, miss.
Yes, miss.
Oy, can
Yes,
you
miss.
follow?
Yes, miss.
Follow, miss.
Hmm? Oh, muna ano kanang nani jud kay importante ang algebra, no? Mhm. Sige. Let's proceed. So that's why we now have, so nakasabot na mo ani? Kani nganong na plus na siya imbis minus? Nganong na plus imbis minus?
Yes, miss.
Can you follow?
Yes, miss.
Yes, miss. Naka-follow ra.
Kay we converted the greater than into less than by multiplying both sides by the negative valued. In that aspect, nawala ang imong what? Standardization of, namdum ka? Unsay gibuhat na to di sa una? Pag standardize nimo, nagbutang ka og a sub 2 og a sub 3. Kumudaghan ang imong variables. So what you did was to come up with what? Kay mao man ni siya ang sulod unta, musulod nga initial. So we converted our less greater 60 man inog, nya greater than 20. So atong because it will be minus and this one is equal to 20. So we converted the greater than into a less than inequality. Therefore, mo follow na siya sa less than nga rule. Understand? Pwede ba
Yes,
ya
miss.
gyud sad ang original? Pero sa original gud nga manual solution, maglabad din yung ulo kay daghan kaayo og variables. Pila na kabuk variables mapuno og duha. No? The a sub 1 and a sub 2. Okay, so kasabot na mo ani. Hello.
Yes, miss.
Yes, miss.
Ako lang ning hinay-hinayon ha. Kay para So you know where this come from? This is from the first constraint. Kani from the second constraint, which was multiplied by -1. This one from the third constraint multiplied by -1 both sides. Mutana, ma'am, diin manigikan, ma'am. Okay. What were the basic variables nga sulod? S1, S2, S3. Kung capacity pa ni, what's the role of S1 to? S1 will absorb the idle capacity. Right?
Yes, miss.
Okay. Since it will absorb all the idle capacity, our initial assumption, what is our objective function? Maximize. What is our initial assumption? Our initial assumption would be, unsay mahitabo kung wa ko'y buhaton? So, if I will not do anything, where will all the capacity go? Wa ko'y buhaton. Where will all the capacity go? Andre, wala ko'y buhaton. Asam na padung, palitan na ako'y capacity in carpentry. Wa ko'y buhaton. Meaning you say, I will not use. So if I will not use, what happens to the capacity? Hala. Kung ikaw ron, nagklase ta nun, unya, wala ka na minaw, wala ka ni attend. Unsay nahitabo nimo? Ang imo unta nga capacity, gihimo nimong idol kinatug ka, di ba, Angelo? No, gihimo nimong idol. So, what happened? All your capacity will go to slack variable, which will absorb the idle capacity. Since ani manggod, mag-maximize ka, asa man ka magsugod? Sa pinakadako o sa pinakagamay? You will start with the smallest. And is it possible for me to improve so that I can get the maximum? Do you get the point?
Yes, miss.
Asa man ka magsugod if I want to make it big? Ari yung kas pinakagamay and then gradually improve to make it big. Isn't it, Allen? Allen, Louie. Sugod ka gamay para makahibalo ka what will happen if I am going to make it big. That's the same assumption when you go into minimization. Asa man ka magsugod? Magsugod kas pinakabadako. And can I improve my solution so that I can get the smallest? That is what you are going to do, no? As a start or initially. Kaya kung moingon ka nga, maximization man nimo, adto na ko sa pinakadako. How do you know that that is the largest? Meaning to say, is it possible for me to improve? You can only make improvements if you start small to allow you to go big. Or if you start large to allow you to get the minimum. Did you get the logic behind it, Jamsi? Jamsi, kakuhaan ka sa logic, ana, no? How do you know that you can improve for a maximization? Only if you know nga gamay ra di ay ko and then I can still make it big. So you start small so that you can make it big. How would you be able to achieve the minimum? By starting with what is big and then is it possible for me to reduce it to the minimum? That is what improvement is, isn't it? Carl. Carl Dave Barrera. Carl, mo ko'y response, oy. Sige lang. Okay na nino? Any questions so far?
Para mahimo silang
None so far, miss.
No, actually, our topic is really interesting if you just listen because this will allow you to think more deeply, no? To come up with analyzing what's going on. Oh, sa ato na ning basahon ha. Asa maning Z sub J. Z sub J is now the sum by multiplying each of the items in your column to 0. So it's like this, 2 times 0 plus negative 1 times 0 plus 0 times 0, gi-add nimong all the products, that is equal to 0. Follow?
Follow, Miss.
Uy, ang uban, nag-follow. Ari ta diri
Yes,
Miss,
miss.
third column. 4 times 0 mo ni imong multiplier. Nganong mao man ni imong multiplier? It's because when we had to assume sa to itong assumption, maximization man. Tanan, wala kay gibuhat. So it went to the idle S sub 1, S sub, balik. It went to the idle capacity S sub 1, S sub 2, S sub 3. Nganong 0 man ni? Because S sub 1 is lock. Naa kay makuha ani? Wala. So that's 0. Ang value ba sa S sub 1, coefficient is, pila may, if this was profit, no? Kani ba siya ba? If this were the profits, ang imong S sub 1, tanan idle man. So, okay, gihimo. Profit will be 0. S sub 2, 0. S sub 3 will also be 0. So, to get on the total, you just multiply this by 2 and then add. 50 times 0 plus 0 times 0 plus 0 times 0, that's 0. That's why all of this row initially is total 0. Nga naman, tanan niyang multiplier o pulo 0. So, syempre, this is going to be 0. Can you follow?
Yes,
Yes,
miss.
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 Okay. Now, we go to the C sub jth row minus Z sub j. Kay balo mo, nga mao na inyong Z sub j. Asa man ning imong C sub j? Di ara. 12, 18, 10, 0, 0, 0. Can you follow?
Yes,
This
Yes,
Miss.
means
miss.
Yes,
this
miss.
row minus this row. Okay? So, 12 minus 0, 12. 18 minus 8, 0, 18. 10 minus 0, of course, this will all be the same as that. Kay kanisha is 0. Right?
Yes, Miss.
Mm. Wala na diri sa katapusan ha. Kaya wa man kayo subtract diri. Na? Alright. What is our asterisk row? And our, later on, ha? Okay. To determine first, this is what you call your contribution to the profit. Diba? This is maximized profit. So, the last column indicates possible improvement. Huh? Possible improvement. Now, when we say 12, this means if I am going to convert one of these, one of these, one of these to x sub 1, its contribution will be 12 for every x sub 1 unit that I will put. For example, x sub 1, ibutang na ko s sub 2. Ako ibalhin ha? X sub 1, I will put it instead in S sub 2. The result will give me 12 as a net effect. So, kay positive man, what is our agreement for positive? It is an increase, isn't it? Hello?
Yes, Miss. Yes, Miss.
Increase, di ba? Okay. If I will go instead for X sub 2, kay usa-usa ra niya, dili tanan. If I go instead for X sub 2, pilay contribution niya? 18 as improvement. So, murag mas better kung X sub 2 akong pilion kaysa X sub 1 because X sub 1 only gives me 12 while X sub 2 will give me a little higher which is 18. Can you follow?
Yes,
Yes,
miss.
Miss.
Yes,
Hello?
miss.
Unya kung X sub 3 pila raman? 10. If I will put in S sub 1, 0. S sub 2, 0. S sub 3, 0. So, which among these three will be my candidate for improvement or as an entering variable? It will be Uy,
X sub 2, miss.
X sub 2. Kay
X sub 2.
maximization munta. Atong objective function is maximize. What is the largest possible? So that will be 18. We call this as our optimum column. Okay. I want you to, how do you call this? Kanang, take no, inyo nang i-copy. Pareho kog copy bi para makan butang mo og kanang unsa na notation. Can you copy this first? I'll give you 2 minutes to copy the table. Para you will put the names.
Okay, miss.
Okay, miss.
Copy sa 2 minutes. Okay, done?
Yes, miss.
Yes, miss.
Okay, done ano?
Yes, miss.
There.
Done na, miss.
So can you kanang indicate? Pwede ninyo i-red line lang ni siya, oh. What is this? You call this optimum column. So pwede ka mag-line diha, optimum column, red line. Now, we will have to find out where will x sub 2 go as a replacing variable. So kinahanglan mo replace na siya S1, S2, or S3. So where will x sub 2 go? What we will do is to, mo ni atong replacing row, no? Optimum column di ay, optimum column. Okay. So we will divide these numbers corresponding kani siya. Kung ato ning usab, this were the constants, di ba? The right hand side. Remember? This is the right hand side.
Yes,
Yes,
miss.
miss.
Mm. So 50 divided by 3, 0 divided by 1, and 0 divided by -1. Choose the smallest non-negative quotient. Have you remembered in the steps nga naa dito'y minimal ratio? Have you remembered in the steps? There was minimal ratio. Hello? Na ano? Sa tong steps ba? Okay.
Yes, miss.
So asa man ani ang smallest, minimal is smallest, isn't it? Non-negative quotient. So you have 50 divided by 3, pila? Uy, pila ni?
Six, 16 dot
Basta. 0 divided by 1,
0, miss.
0. And then 0 divided by negative, di pwede. 'Di ba? Di pwede. So you have a choose only between the two. Which one is smallest? It will be this row, isn't it? Mo
Yes,
na siya
miss.
mong asterisk
Yes,
row.
miss.
Or you also call this as your replacing row. So kani siya unsa to ni optimum column. This is your replacing row, okay? Or your asterisk row. Asay ilang intersection? 1. Intersection is 1, right? You
Yes,
call
miss.
1 as your pivot number. You call 1 as your pivot number. Now, why do we call this as our pivot number? It is because this is now our indicator of how we can generate, di ba, sa katong akong gihatag ninyong x sub 1, x equals 1, y equals 2, z equals 3. The rest of the, if x has a coefficient of 1, ang iyang column o all the other numbers in the same row and column will be 0. In other words, kani siya 1. That means 3 should be 0 and negative 1 should be 0 later, no? By the process of algebraic solution. So, this is going to be your pivot number 1. What is the role of the pivot number? In this example, wala kay problema kay wala siya daan. If, for example, this is 5, kung atong pivot number 5, the pivot number should be equal to 1. So what are you going to do? To make this 1, you will divide the whole thing, the whole row by 5. Para 1 ni siya and the rest will just follow. Now, take note. Kung naa ka equation nga 2x plus 4y equals 6, pareho ra gyud na if you divide the whole equation left and right by 2. So that you will have dato 2x plus 4y equals 6. You will have x plus 2y is equal to 3. Pareho ra na sila. In the same manner that you can multiply both sides of an equation by the same number without changing its value. Kung maka-multiply ka, maka-divide sad ka for both sides the same number so that and yet you cannot change the value. Can you follow?
Yes, miss.
Yes, miss.
Okay. So 1 man siya. Walay problema kay 1 naman siya daan. This means di na ko mag-divide. Did you get me?
Yes, miss.
Hello.
Yes, miss.
Did you get me? Okay. Karon, what is the role of x sub 2? Karon kay balo na ka nga naa ni siya nga column, your x sub 2 will now remove s sub 2. Balhino na ni becomes x sub 2 and the 0, kani nga 0 will now be replaced by its contribution. Pila yang contribution? 18. Did you get it?
Yes, miss.
No, 18. Ha? O, 18 na siya. So, kani siyang S sub 1, 0 ang partner. Ang S sub 2, 18. Ang S sub 3, 0 gyapon ang partner. Ang row, kani nga row would be negative 1, 1, 1, 0, 1, 0. And this is also 0. The next problem will now be the first row and the last row. What are you going to do? We have to make this equal to 0. How do we make this equal to 0? Muranig process of elimination when you have systems of equations. If this is 1 and this is 3, I will multiply this by 3. So that when I subtract from the original 3, this will now become 0. In other words, I will multiply the whole row by 3 and subtract from this row here. Can you follow? Hello?
Yes,
So can
miss.
you make another table on the side? With this new row, this will now become 0 by multiplying this row by 3 and subtract from that. Anyway, there will be the next table. So multiply by 3, how much? Negative
Negative 3.
3. Subtract from 2. So 2 minus 3. Subtract from, huh? This becomes 5. 5. Multiply by 3 is 3. Subtract from 3, this becomes 0. Multiply by 3, subtract from 4, this becomes 1. Multiply by 3, subtract from 1, this is 1. Multiply by 3, subtract from 0, this becomes negative 1. Negative 3. Multiply by 3, subtract from that, it becomes 0. And multiply this by 3, subtract from 0, 0, di ba? Subtract from 50, 50 minus 0 is still 50. Karon, anyway, there will be the next table, no? I want to make negative 1 as 0 also. What will I do with your replacing row? Kani siya nga row mo, ni siya mo generate. That's why you call it a replacing row. I will multiply this by negative 1 and subtract from this, so that becomes 0. So multiply by negative 1, that is 1. Subtract from 0, that will be negative 1. Hello? Negative 1 times negative 1. Subtract from. So 0 minus 1 is minus 1. Multiply by negative 1. Subtract from negative 1. So this is negative 1 and negative 1. It becomes negative 2. Multiply by negative 1. Subtract from this. Can you follow? So negative 1 subtract from this would be 0.5. And then here, negative 1 subtract 0. This is negative 1. Subtract from this becomes positive 1. And this one will be 0. Subtract from this, it is 1. And this one is 0. And thus, you're going to generate na diha naani ang katong mga gipang sulti-sulti nako. Okay. So this will be your new table. Did you get it? Diba? Nakoy 5, 0, 0. Tanawa ni ha. Mauna na siya. Is 0, 1, 0. And all the rest were generated. Replacing row, entering variable x sub 2, 18, and so on. So how do I generate this one? It is 50 times 0. Can you follow? Plus 18 times 0 plus 0 times 0. Mauna siya. Kani 5 times 0 is 5 times 0.
0,
0.
miss.
Negative
Zero.
1
Zero,
times
miss.
18. Negative 18. Negative 1 times 0. Add up all, negative 18. 0 times 0,
Zero, miss.
0.
0. 1 times 18 is 18. And then
18.
add, you get 18. And he
18.
said, multiply, multiply, multiply. That will still give you 18, and so on and so forth. Do you understand?
Yes,
Yeah.
Yes,
miss.
Kani, where
miss.
did we
Yes,
get?
miss.
It will be what?
12 minus negative 18, miss.
12 minus negative 18. Plus, di ba? 30?
Yes, miss.
No? And then 18 minus 18, 0. 10 minus 18, negative 8, and so on. And this one. Repeat the whole process if you have not obtained the optimum solution. Let's read if it's possible for us to improve. Unsa tayo atong objective function? What's the objective function?
Sima,
Uy,
Maximize.
maximize, isn't it?
Maximize, miss.
Mm.
Yes, miss.
What is 30? It means that if I put in x sub 1, pwede pa ko mo add by 30. Did you get it?
Yes, miss.
Hello, I can still improve kay positive 30. If I put in x sub 2, di na pwede because it is 0. If I put in x sub 3, imbes add, minus. So reduce. This one means retain. This one means reduce. This one means retain. Do I have a choice? Do I have a choice, Kathia?
Yes,
Uy,
miss.
wala ko choice kanira, di ba?
Oh, 30 ra, miss.
Oh, so this means this will be, what do I call this? Possible of improvement. So what is the first column called? Your optimum
Column.
column.
Optimum column, miss.
Oh, and then what will we do next? Divide this by the corresponding entry. So kani di pwede ha. 0 divided by negative 1, not pwede. Wala sa kay choice. It will be this row, isn't it? 50 divided by 5. So kani siya. Get it? Mo ni ang imong replacing row. What's the intersection? 5. Can you follow?
Yes,
Yes, miss.
miss.
So our pivot number is
5.
5. Unsay meaning sa 5? Divide everything by 5. This becomes now 1,
1.
0, 1/5, 1/5, negative 3 over 5, 0, and this is 10. Can you follow? Anyway,
Yes,
naman sa
miss.
next
Yes,
table.
miss.
No? And what is our entering variable? X sub 1. Asa ni Padong? Ari dire. So that will be X sub 1 to replace and 12 to replace 0. Can you follow?
Yes,
Yes,
miss.
miss.
Hello? No? Anyway, ako mning ihatag ninyo. So, tanawon lang niya ni ninyo, ha? Okay. Ah, did you get it? This is now the one. This will now be the final. When do you think you are going to get the final table? Only if this one, kaning a row, is your indicator if it's possible improvement. No more improvement if you put in x sub 1. No more improvement if you put in x sub 2. Reduce, reduce. No more, no more. So they have obtained optimum solution. What's your optimum solution? X sub 1 equals 10. X sub 2 equals 10. And your slack variable S sub 3 will have a value of 10. Did you get it?
Yes,
Yes, miss.
miss.
Yes,
Hmm?
miss.
Did you understand our discussion? Anyway, this is what will be. We will meet virtually also on Tuesday. So sa Tuesday, adto mo sa inyong classroom, ani? Kaya na ba mo klase before, di ba? Hello?
Di pa mi sure,
Wala.
mister.
Tuesday, kay Holy Week na biya na. Di pa mo sure. Anyway, nag-ingon man ko nga sa Tuesday, mag face to face, mag virtual gihapon ta, no?
Yes, miss. Yes, miss.
Yes,
Yes, miss.
Ah, so, you please, ang akong assignment ninyo is go over the steps. Na ang steps din ha, ha? Naagyod ang steps sa tanan. Ako ni email karon, no? And then on Tuesday, na ako'y exercise nga ihatag ninyo which I will put in Canvas. Pero kayo naman to kay formulate and then transform to standard application ra gyud dinhi. And then sample nga kwan. I will just treat it as an assignment or exercise. Just do it according to how you do it. Do you get me?
Yes,
Yes,
miss.
Yes,
miss.
Yes,
miss.
miss.
Magbalik
Yes,
gyapon kog
miss.
discuss aning simplex method. Did you get it?
Ah, yes,
Okay,
miss.
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 Hmm?
Thank you, miss.
Pero what I want you to know is what does each of the rows or columns or numbers signify? Example, what does C sub j and Z sub j signify? Diba I told you it is an indicator that possible improvement can still be made. Isn't it? No?
Yes,
Possible
miss.
improvement can still be made. You go back to unsa may akong objective function? Is it maximization or minimization? Kung maximization, can I still improve? It should be positive. If it is minimization, can I still improve? This is reduction, reduction. Yes, I can. Did you get me?
Yes, miss.
Hello?
Yes,
Yes,
miss.
miss.
Okay. Sige. I hope you learned something, even just kanang dili kayo klaro, pero naaman ni I can give this to you, practice and understand, no? What it is all about. And then I will put on Canvas the exercise so that you can also practice on it. Do you get me? And then I will guide you on how you are going to do that exercise. Pero ihatag na ko daan para na mo idea what to do. Did you get me?
Okay, miss. Thank
Okay,
you,
miss.
miss.
Mm. Okay. So, thank you very much for joining this afternoon. Na over ta by 4 minutes. Anyway, that's very important and I have to discuss with you some background. Ang makadugay nato ang mga background manggod nga lessons that you are supposed to learn from your algebra, no? And recall. Nya usahay di man ma-recall. Okay?
Yes,
Okay, miss.
miss.
All right. So, I hope that and have a kuan ha para unsa man ni oy mag spiritual kuan man ta next week, no? And then
Yes,
also mm, so attend to some of your spiritual needs on next week, and I wish you a kuan na a also Easter, no? Easter Sunday pero mag Palm Sunday pa man ta. Okay? So bye everyone, kay basig na pa mo'y klase or wala mo'y klase sa uban.
Wala ra, miss.
Wala ra, miss.
Wala ra, miss.
Wala ra. Mm. So, ako ning i-send ang inyong mga notes kanisad siya kay you so that you can go over it, and then on Tuesday pag meet nato, then you will be able to ask questions. Get me? And also the exercise pag practice because I will guide you on how to do it. Kay dili pa man ako na ipasubmit, maghatag sa ko guidance how you are going to do that on Tuesday, and I will ask you to submit it some other time. Get me?
Yes,
Yes,
miss.
miss.
Yes, miss.
Yes, miss.
Okay. Thanks. Thanks for watching.
Thank
Thanks for watching.
thank
Thank
you.
you,
Sige.
miss.
Goodbye, miss.